Welcome back, East Texas. As I said, our guest today, Dr. Stanley Andrisse, has a journey that defies the odds and serves as an inspiration to individuals facing their own obstacles. Despite societal barriers, such as poverty and a criminal record, he pursued his dream and became a medical professional and a professor. Dr. Andrisse, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Would you just start by telling the community a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got here today?
Yes. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with your audience. So a little bit about myself, as was kind of mentioned in the introduction, I am a formerly incarcerated individual with 3 felony convictions, was sentenced to 10 years in prison as a prior and persistent career criminal. I was sentenced under the 3 strikes law of Missouri, where the prosecutor was actually pushing for 20 years to life in prison because she felt that I had no hope for changing the decisions that I had been making up until that time in my early 20s. I got sentenced to 10, as I just mentioned. Fast forward some time, I did my time. I'm now Dr. Stanley Andrisse, an endocrine scientist and assistant professor at Howard University College of Medicine, a place that many people, including myself, like to call the Mecca of historically Black colleges and universities, #1 producer of Black and brown scientists in our country. Also was at Johns Hopkins Medicine for some time, have a visiting affiliation at Georgetown Medicine, took my talents across seas and was did some time at Imperial College London. So I didn't quite live up to those expectations that this prosecutor set on this young Black boy from the Ferguson, Missouri area. In that, this story and narrative that's told about Black boys in our country, and particularly Black men and boys that come from places like Ferguson, Missouri, and North St. Louis. There's this narrative that we are not capable, that we are not deserving. What is likely the path and outcomes that a person faces from those communities are incarceration, poverty, poor health outcomes. And, that was what was prophesized for me. And, I defied those odds.
Right, right. Well, first I have to say congratulations to you and just way to go on working hard and breaking the cycle and going after your dream and not letting someone telling you that there was no hope for your future hold you back. You went for it and you're here now. And from what I've seen and read, you are also helping others also try to break that cycle. So based on what you just shared, there's so much to unpack there. You said, persistent criminal. So how did you break the cycle?
Yeah, and I wouldn't, I'll give a quick synopsis of it, but I encourage you all to, for a fuller version, to pick up my book. It was a #1 new release in educator biographies on Amazon. It's called From Prison Cells to Ph.D. It is never too late to do good. From Prison Cells to Ph.D. is also shares the name of the nonprofit that I co-founded, which I hope to share a little bit about in the time we have here. But the quick version of it is when I went into prison, I got hit with this 10-year sentence, and I very much had this prosecutor painting this picture of me as this dangerous threat to society that was irreparable. And as a young person who's, we know that the brain is not fully developed until the mid-20s, so I was still very mendable, and I believed this person, although I didn't really quite, necessarily like what was being said, but I believed it, and so I internalized it to some extent. And but what was fortunate for me, I had this mentor step into my life that really saw me using my talents differently, and he started investing in my talent and my potential, literally putting money on my books and spending time with me to help me kind of see myself differently. The other big thing that happened, aside from my faith and attaching to my higher power, there was this mentor stepping into my life, and then also over the course of about 2 years, multiple surgeries, hospitalizations, and amputations, I ended up losing my father to his battle with type 2 diabetes. And that was as many who've experienced losing a loved one, it's very challenging, emotionally difficult. But when you're locked in a cage, trying to deal with these types of emotions is, exponentially more challenging.
Right.
So for me, what I did was I dove into reading about diabetes and endocrinology. So I read my first scientific article on diabetes while I was locked in a cage. And although, my body was physically locked in this prison cell, my mind was freely roaming around the human cell. And in that way, I was able to free my mind and free myself from this the psychological incarceration that happens during incarceration, which is actually, in my opinion, more damaging than the physical incarceration that takes place. And so I was able to kind of free myself from this psychological chains and started seeing myself differently. And that with the help of this mentor who helped me see myself differently, I ended up putting a number of applications together to continue my education before I was even released. And it took months to put these together, and almost just immediately after submitting, just rejection after rejection after rejection. I got rejected from every single place I applied to, except for St. Louis University, where this mentor was on the admissions committee. So I got into St. Louis University. When I got out, I completed my MBA and Ph.D. simultaneously at the top of my class, and then moved on to those other institutions like Hopkins, Howard, Imperial, that I was just mentioning.
Right. Right. That's such a great story. I'm sorry about your father. It's inspiring and interesting when what we view as a setback is setting us up, and I won't say a greater comeback because your father's not with you, but for a comeback, right? And you used that, the loss of your father, the time of being incarcerated, and it set you up to where you are today. And so you should be incredibly proud for all that you have accomplished despite the setbacks that you have faced throughout life. And so you said rejection after rejection for the colleges, and then so you played college football, and so what made that coach give you an opportunity to play on that team?
So interestingly, so to talk a little bit about the school to prison pipeline and, how I was involved in that in my own experience. So just, the school to prison pipeline is this idea that people move into the system even before they're physically moved into the system of the criminal legal system. So I was arrested for the first time at 15 years old, and I moved into the juvenile system at that time, and I continued to make poor decisions and accumulated more interaction with the system from that time. But even before I was 15, in elementary, middle, and definitely in high school, I was just constantly in suspension and detention and near expulsion. But what my saving grace was, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I ran track, played basketball, and played football. And my track coach, I was really fast is why I was good at the other sports, and track was kind of my main sport. And my track coach was the disciplinary coach. So he kind of, every time I was getting ready to get kicked out, he was the disciplinary principal as well. And he was my saving grace. So I actually got a football scholarship before I was incarcerated. So I got a football scholarship and moved into college as in undergrad. And I was sentenced to 10 years in prison just moments after, just a couple of days after actually graduating with my undergraduate degree. So, while most people were celebrating trying to get internships and moving on, I was sitting in a courtroom looking at 20 years to life in prison, then eventually being sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Right. After serving the time in prison, and then now you're a faculty member at a university, have you faced challenges even getting jobs like that? I mean, you're working for Howard University, which
Yes.
is not an easy job to get. So, so what challenges did you face?
Yeah, so great question. I think, so if I could also just use this as an opportunity to mention my nonprofit, From Prison Cells to Ph.D., we run a program called Prison to Professionals. We call it P2P, or the P2P Scholars Program. We try to we call it the Scholars Program. And I will get to your answer your question, but we call it the Scholars Program because we want to move away from this idea of using language such as criminal, convict, felon, which has this, which takes away the person's humanness. And so we want to help the person see themselves as something, that their God-given talents and their, innate abilities. So we use the word scholar. So we have the Scholars Program, which is essentially something that I co-founded along with two other people I was incarcerated with. And it was our understanding that in order to kind of put your life back together after prison, education is this transformational tool that is not only it helps to put letters behind your name, but it's even more than that. It's kind of this, it's a therapeutic healing that also takes place. And then it also gives you a network that most people who've been incarcerated don't necessarily have access to. So the way that I got into St. Louis University, the way I got into Johns Hopkins, the way I got into Howard, the way I got into Imperial, the way I got into Georgetown, were all through networking. So my organization has basically is a playbook on how to navigate through the different challenges. And it also offers this opportunity to be connected to people that can open doors for folks who've been through the system. So in the past 7 years, we've worked with thousands of currently and formerly incarcerated men and women across the country. We do some work here in Texas as well. I'm actually in Houston, Texas right now at the moment. I'm visiting some family. But the answer is that I had a person on the backside helping me in. It was through the power of networking and mentoring that I've gotten really into most of the places that I've gained employment. And what we're working to do is try to change that landscape to really educate employers as well as working with people with convictions, but educating employers to understand the value of hiring people with, the talent that they're looking for, and finding ways to better understand their background and how it likely isn't a hindrance to them having that job.
Right. Yep. I think you said earlier that you're trying to help people see their way out of situations. I think that's part of the battle is sometimes they just can't see their way out. And if they just had someone guiding them, such as a mentor, they likely wouldn't end up back, repeating the same cycle. And so I think mentorship is so important in the tools that your nonprofit offers. And so what are some of the stereotypes, you're talking about trying to educate employers, what are some of the stereotypes that you believe are some of the systemic barriers to previous scholars, as you call them?
Yeah, so I think we in our society has built this understanding and belief that if you go to prison, people aren't even really, necessarily concerned about what you did to get to prison. It just automatically, it's just a blanket, you are a bad person. So one, I think, understanding the person and understanding their human value. So that's one of the things that we really hope to get people to see is that, one, give people the respect, civility that any human should be offered. Right. And then two, the other thing that we hope to get employers and society to see is that, I'm a math science guy and numbers is something that I'm very comfortable with. But I think many people are familiar with something called a bell-shaped curve. So it's the normal distribution. So most things that happen in the world fall into this like normal distribution. And so if we think about that and we think about talent in that way, talent has this normal distribution. So just as many brilliant, intelligent, and talented people there are in, the outside world, there's that same amount of brilliance, intelligence, and talent inside, those walls. So we're literally missing out on talent if you just blanketly say this person is bad. There's no way that they can help our company. So we really want employers to see that it's just by the numbers. There's 2.2 million people in our country that are incarcerated and locked in cages, which is the highest number in the entire world. The state of Louisiana itself has the highest, it incarcerates more than any other country, and there's several states in the United States that incarcerate more than any other country. So we incarcerate a lot of people. About 90 million people have some type of criminal record. So if we're trying to X out 90 million people from having job hours, it doesn't make sense. It makes so much more sense to give those people an opportunity to be contributors to our society. Our world and our country will be better off if we utilize the brilliance that's there.
Right.
So instead of locking it up, we should utilize it. And 95% of people who are in prison are coming back to the community at some point in time.
Right.
So, it would just help us all out if we gave them opportunities and understood their talent.
Right. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is just really trying to give people a path to stability and a path forward by educating these employers. Because you're right. I mean, we don't know what all of those people have been through. I mean, if I just speak from own personal experience, I grew up in a single parent household and was at home alone a lot with my younger brother. And so, I mean, we were just a second away from, getting into trouble, because our parents weren't there. My mom was working 2 or 3 jobs. So I just think about if we had gotten in trouble, like it's exactly what you said. My brother and I are talented, but yet we could be behind bars just because of something out of our control. We're 15 years old and at home by ourselves. So I think that you're exactly right. There's a lot of talented people, and we just need to learn their story and to see if there is an opportunity to give them a path forward. And so back to your nonprofit a bit. I think your nonprofit, I'm going to read it. I think it was selected to get a grant of 5 years for $5.2 million. Congratulations. How were you selected, and what are you going to use that money for?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So we were recently awarded this grant from the National Institutes of Health. It's called the Compass Grant. And NIH, I always explain to people who may not have as much science background, I call the NIH Dr. Fauci's organization. He's actually no longer there, but everybody remembers Dr. Fauci during COVID, and he was one of the directors. He wasn't the top person, but he was director of infectious disease. So NIH is the #1 funder of biomedical research in the entire world. And it usually gives money to universities and, prestigious institutions like Johns Hopkins, who's the #1 funder of NIH dollars. And this was they wanted to flip things around and give money to community organizations, and with the idea that communities know what is best to make them healthier. So NIH is all about health, National Institutes of Health, and biomedical research. And they said, you know what, we've been giving billions of dollars to universities to solve these health problems. Why don't we give this big chunk of money to community organizations and let them come up with the answers to making our communities healthier? So that was the premise behind NIH giving this money.
Yeah.
How we were selected, so we were one of 25 out of several hundred, a couple hundred applications, all community organizations, and we are the only organization that was selected that is made up of formerly incarcerated leaders. So our organization, and myself and the other leaders in the organization are all formerly incarcerated. We're only one of a few that are focusing on a population of people who've been incarcerated. We're the only project that's focusing on currently incarcerated. So I think we got selected because of our unique leadership.
Yeah.
We're formerly incarcerated, and the two leaders and myself all have advanced degrees. So we're formerly incarcerated people with advanced degrees. There's no other, kind of hard to find that. We are building that. Our organization is building that force. So I think that's one reason. And then our unique population. And then we've really just explained how incarcerated individuals tend to be the underserved of underserved. So there's a lot of there's programming to try to help, communities in poverty and communities who are under-resourced, but incarcerated people actually usually get left out of, those dollars. So I think that was how we got selected. Our unique population, our unique intervention, which we're looking to increase internet connectivity and telehealth communications inside prison, and then our unique leadership.
Right. Yeah, your leadership is unique, and it gives you all share the same passion, and then also it's relatable, like to the community you are serving and the people you are trying to help. You can all relate, and they probably feel comfortable immediately with all of you in leadership. And so you said you're trying to increase the technology in prisons, and then what was the other thing you said you're going to use the grant for?
And telehealth. So interestingly, what people may not be familiar with is that, you know, internet is not something that is readily available inside prison. And so we're working with this particular grant is specific to the work that we do in Maryland and Missouri, and it will increase telehealth. We hope to be able, because if you think about from a financial standpoint, prisons don't hire medical specialists. They hire a physician who is like a general practitioner. So if you have like in need of a podiatrist, or you're in need of an endocrinologist, or you're in need of a nephrologist, you can't get that type of specialty on the outside. We could of course do that, but on the inside it's not possible. So we hope to bring that by someone can be sitting in their prison cell and on a Zoom call like this and meeting with the professional. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we hope to do.
Great. I hope you're able to accomplish those goals. Earlier, when we were talking, you talked about, you kind of briefly mentioned the psychological ramifications of being incarcerated. Will you just kind of expand on that a little bit, on how they impact the hope and determination of someone who is incarcerated?
Yeah, I think the psychological ramifications run very deep. So from starting, of course, even before incarceration, coming from communities, which, I applaud you. I, of course, am familiar, with your journey, and I applaud you for being where you are. And I think you made a very stark analogy of one little thing, and we wouldn't have your amazingness sitting here in front of us, right? If you had been incarcerated, it's that our world would have missed out on all that you bring to the community that you serve.
Yeah.
And it's that example of how something like why we should be giving opportunities. But so I think that the psychological ramifications even start before someone is incarcerated. If they're coming from communities, it sounds like that you've been familiar with, and then once you reach incarceration, you go through a process of like what I explained, whether it's the prosecutor, in order to get the highest sentence, paints this picture of you as this like demonized person, right? Or not person, just this demonized, dehumanized thing. And you have this diminished value of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I went into prison with that feeling and belief in my, how I saw myself. And I've noticed that many other people have that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then incarceration is just this every single day. It's kind of this dehumanizing reminder that you are scum and you're less than human. So unpackaging all, then you get out of prison and trying to because 95% of people do that are incarcerated, you get out, and trying to unpackage that is just very challenging, because it's so embedded that you don't even know that it's there, that you think less of yourself. You don't even know that you think less of yourself. And, I think for me, it was helpful to seek professional help. And in our program, we have a mental health provider on our team. And then we also encourage people to seek, and we also seek mental health and to really promote self-care. So it's really about acknowledging that you really can't make it through incarceration unscathed on the psychological level, and being intentional about your mental health and understanding what this experience may have done and how you can start to heal and move forward and put your life back together and that psychological standpoint. So we truly believe in encouraging people to seek professional help or support groups.
Right, right. No, and let's be real. You really can't make it through life without being unscathed, and and having psychological ramifications. Would you please just kind of give a list of what services your nonprofit offers, and then maybe some other services that people who have been incarcerated wouldn't know about that may help them?
So thank you for asking that question. We are a reentry organization that focuses on helping people currently and formerly incarcerated men and women pursue higher education and meaningful employment. So we do things like college and career readiness. We have leadership development. We have preparing people for job interviews. So we offer a number of different services like that, as well as everyone who's in our program is connected to resource specialists and mentors and tutors that work with them on a weekly basis to get things like, a driver's ID or state ID and any type of social services that they may need. And on a more kind of values level, what we really see ourselves doing is helping build a family. So we, as you mentioned, there's this authenticity that comes from all of our team has been formerly incarcerated themselves and has moved to this place of being a professional. So there's this authenticity that we provide that says you can do this. Then we provide information. So we a lot of organizations provide information, but if you don't have that authenticity piece, and if you're not building a family where they trust you, because if you think about a person who's been through the carceral system, there's a high level of distrust for like people that truly may want to help them, but they just don't trust them. So you have to build that trust. And that's something that we're really good at doing, and building that family, and then providing information and engaging people in their own journey. So understanding that the individuals have the brilliance and the things they need to succeed, you need to actually engage them in using those resources and their talents.
Right.
So I think our biggest, and what I would encourage other organizations that work in this space, is to employ formerly incarcerated leaders and staff, because that is our biggest asset as to how we're able to help the people that we are seeking to help, is that they trust us.
Right. Right. Yep. People want to be trusted. People want to feel wanted and needed, and go so much further when they feel trusted, wanted, and needed. And so, what I like about many things about your nonprofit, but is that it's a path forward, and you're giving people an opportunity. You're trying to educate others to surround the people who have been formerly incarcerated with people who understand where they've been, to try to help them move forward. So, hats off to you. That it's incredible. And so you seem to have this unwavering belief in your abilities, and just have an unmatched resiliency. So what advice would you give to someone who is formerly incarcerated and just maybe can't find that strength within them to go reach their full potential?
Yes, thank you for that question. So I would offer the subtitle to my book, which is "It is Never Too Late to Do Good." So I didn't mention yet in our time together, but my family, we are Haitian immigrants. And so the first language I learned growing up was Haitian Creole. And "it is never too late" is a phrase that my father used to always tell me as I was going through making all these poor decisions in my adolescence. The actual wording, the phrase that he actually used was "Il n'est jamais pas trop tard pour faire bien." And so the word-to-word translation is "it is never too late to do good," but the true meaning of what he was saying is it's never too late to reach your full potential, and it's never too late to do the right thing, and it's never too late for you to provide value to yourself and others. So this message that he was giving me, I think, is what I share with, what I would share with others, and what I do share with others, is that, and it's also a powerful message to the criminal legal system. He was saying that he understood that I was making these poor decisions, and that I was, getting myself into challenging and troubling scenarios, and I've gotten myself incarcerated, but he didn't give up on me. He believed that one day that it was never too late, and that one day I would understand the value that I have and that I can bring to others and myself and my community. And he truly believed that everyone can tap into that, and everyone has the ability to change and to tap into their full potential. So that's the message that, it's such a powerful message to the criminal legal system, who readily sentences people to 10, 20, 30, 40 life, 2 lives, 3. Like, why would you sentence someone to 3 life sentences? Like, you could die and get reincarnated, and we're gonna lock you back up for life again, and you come back again, we're gonna lock you up again, because we don't believe that you can ever change. And it's disgusting almost that that we don't believe in that ability to change. And so I would just encourage people, it is never too late to do good. It's never too late to bring value to yourself and your community and family.
Yeah, that's a beautiful saying by your father. What's your father's name?
William Andrisse. It's actually, my son is William too. We named my son after him.
That's amazing. Well, William is smiling down at you because you lived up to his saying that it's never too late, and you were making the most of it. And so you mentioned the legal system, so I want to touch on that just briefly. I think you said that you had the 3-strike policy in Missouri, and there's some other states that have those. I think Florida and a few others, not to just call out individual states. I have nothing against any individual state. But are you planning to do, or are you currently doing any work to try to educate any of the legal systems and try to work with them to educate them to help people get a path to stability?
Yeah, so those a lot of those 3-strike policies, which became prevalent in the 80s, in the 90s, and early 2000s, some of those policies are starting to be walked back a little bit. California was the one that started it, in terms of the first state to really have that policy. But we do policy work. The space that we do policy work in is something we call education justice. So, we actually just had a big Hill Day where we brought in over 34 million incarcerated people from across the country, representing 20 different states, into DC, to advocate to their legislators about pay equity and about banning the box on college applications, which, to talk about those two things, which are 2 of our policy priorities. Ban the box is to remove the criminal conviction question from college applications, to give people a fair chance at getting into a school and not having their background potentially hinder them. And pay equity is something that we're working on. Pell Grants were, before 1994, Pell Grants were present and able to be used inside prison. So people inside prisons were getting bachelor's, master's, even doctorate degrees. In 1994, the Clinton crime bill took that away. For the past 30 years, it has been gone. We fought to get that reinstated. My organization and many others, have been fighting for decades. It finally came back. But now that it's back, we want to argue that people on the inside can do work studies and get paid the same thing that people in universities, which is, a whole different topic that I could spend a lot of time talking about. But I encourage you to maybe watch the movie The 13th to hear how slavery still is present in our country, because the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, but in incarceration, you can still. So we're that's one of our big policy things right now is ending slavery in prisons, and trying to, we're calling it pay equity, to try to get people inside paid more equitably compared to folks on the outside.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. So is there anything about your nonprofit or your story that we haven't touched on that you want to share today?
I would just encourage you, if you're interested, our work is really moved forward by volunteerism. We have a presence in over 35 states. So no matter where you are, if you're we have a presence in Texas, I encourage you to get in touch with us and maybe volunteer or just to learn more about the work that we do. We're constantly educating as well, because I think that's a big part of how we change the narrative is we have to educate people. So I would just encourage you to look us up from prison cells to Ph.D. And reach out and stay in touch.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and joining East Texas Now. So East Texas, you heard it. Go to the website from prison cells to phd.org to check out Dr. Andrisse's nonprofit and to figure out ways that you can give back, to educate, to be a friend, to maybe even be an employer, and to just volunteer and to help everybody as our society as a whole. So thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate it, and we wish you the very best in your path forward. Congratulations on everything you have accomplished. You should be very proud, and William is smiling down.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Peace and blessings.
Thank you. Bye.